Alright, let's look at some more examples here. Now, you can see that I have some already here on our paper. Now, we are basically looking at these different functions, and I'm just giving it to you in different forms here. And we are trying to find out the values of f of 2 and f of negative 1. So all you have to do is, in example 1, you can see it's a set of ordered pairs. Find your x values for 2 and negative 1 and identify the corresponding y value. So looking at our first function here, you have f of 2. So again, as I said, look for the x value where x is 2 and it is our first ordered pair. And you look at its corresponding y value, and that will be your f of 2 or your y. Do the exact same thing for f of negative 1. Look at your ordered pairs and find the value of negative 1 right there, and then its corresponding y value will be the value of your function at negative 1. That's your y. That's all you have to do when you're given a set of ordered pairs. You'll do a similar thing when they're giving it to you in this form, where, as you know, these are all your x values and these are your y values. So you're trying to find f of 2 and f of negative 1. So f of 2 and f of negative 1. Now you can see 2 corresponds to 1. So that will be the value of the function at 2. And negative 1 corresponds to 7. And 7 will be your value for f of negative 1. And that's it. Now, the last example here, you can see, is a graph. Now, in this case, we're still trying to find f of 2 and f of negative 1. So let's say I'm going to find these two values. And again, remember that y equals f of x. These are all functions here. So when you're talking about f of 2, you'll go on your x-axis and find 2, and then you will find the corresponding point on the graph, and then see what value of y it corresponds to. So you start at your 2, find your point on the graph, and look for the y value. And as you can see, when x is 2, the y value is negative 3. So you're basically just trying to use that point here to help you out. You'll do the same thing with f of negative 1. So you go on your x-axis, find your negative 1, and then find that point corresponding to negative 1 on your graph, and then look for the corresponding y value. And as you can see, when x is negative 1, your y is 2. And there you have it. So if they're giving it to you in this form, other than an equation, that is what you will do to find your various different values for your function. Okay? Now I want to look at another set of examples here. In this couple examples here, we are basically given an equation where y defines that equation defines y as a function f of x, and what we are trying to do is solve the equation in terms of y, solve for y in terms of x, and then we will replace our y with our function notation f of x. That's the first thing you will do, is take your equation, solve it for y, and then replace the y with f of x. Once you do that, then the second part will be you will find f of 3, which again tells you find the value of your function when x equals 3. Okay, so we're looking at this example here, this equation, x minus 4y equals 8. Now, the first thing you want to do is solve this equation for y, which means that get y by itself and move everything else over to the other side. We will start out by moving our x over, which will give us negative 4y equals negative x plus 8. Then you want to get your y by itself, so divide everything by negative 4. And you will see you'll end up with y equals The two negatives will become positive and gives you 1/4 x. Positive and negative will give you negative. 8/4 gives you 2. Alright, so you end up with y equals 1/4 x minus 2. Now you want to replace your y with f of x. You end up with f of x equals 1/4 x minus 2. So this was all the part A of our problem. Part B, or the second part, was find f of 3. So once you have your equation in the form of a function notation, now we can go ahead and find f of 3, where we replace our x with 3, and you will end up with 3/4 minus 2, which is negative 1/4, or negative 5/4, however you would like to represent that. Okay, so that's all you had to do, was start out with solving the equation for y, and then replacing the y with f of x, and then the last part was, of course, finding f of 3. Now, let's look at another example, and let's see if you guys can do that. Just follow along with me, or work along with me. And here we have y minus 3x squared equals 2. So again, the first part is getting y by itself. So you start out by moving the 3x squared, and that will give you y equals 3x squared plus 2. Once you get your y by itself, replace the y with f of x, and you end up with f of x equals 3x squared plus 2. And then the second part was finding f of 3, and that will give you 3. Replace your x with 3, so you end up with 3 times 3 squared plus 2, which will give you 3 times 9 plus 2, which is 27. Add 2 to it, which will give you 29. So f of 3 equals 29, and there you have it.